What are some signs of someone with an inflated ego? They think they can possibly be better than me at something. Wait. They say nice things about themselves all the time and like things you shouldn't say about yourself. For example, my aunt likes to say how empathetic and intuitive she is. And the way that she says it, you can tell she feels superior. Drives me crazy. I hate that. People who are so obviously in love with themselves, they even analyze themselves. Actually, this is a really good question. From my experience, I have noticed these signs. Too much is never enough for them. They dislike when others succeed. Constantly comparing themselves. Craving respect and recognition. Always being defensive. They hardly make efforts to help others. They think the world revolves around them. Setting unattainable goals. I don't know if I can think of more. But whatever, they are pretty easy to recognize. They take conflict to the extreme. They can't just have a disagreement with someone. They have to get back at them, tarnish that person's reputation, and brag about doing so. Best thing to do is just point blank ignore rumors about yourself. I've heard many things about myself. Usually 1 in 10 is correct, and it's crazy some of the misinformation people end up with. Silence is deadly. If you don't respond, it kills them inside. Let it. Always tries to one-up your stories or experiences. I've never been a social butterfly and have a hard time relating to most people. When someone is telling a story and I have something I see as relatable, I'll usually tell my story. Now I'm worried that this is how I come across. Whoops. So, I recommend in those situations to be relatable just as you are being, and finish by asking them a question that is specific to whatever they were just talking about. That way it is clear you were listening to them and not just waiting for your turn to speak on the subject, and will also be less likely to come across as trying to one-up. There's many signs. They can tell jokes at someone else's expense but can't take it themselves. They can't stand it if their significant other is more successful than them. That's just toxic. They lie frequently about their own success. They can't admit they were ever wrong about something. Or they just try to get out of apologizing properly. They set other people up to fail. They treat anyone they deem below them in rank like trash. They use phrases like "I'm sorry you feel that way." This is not an apology, you're just putting the blame on the person you should apologize to. Inability to take constructive criticism. That's the weird thing about me. I always take constructive criticism or advice better from strangers or people I rarely know than people I'm very close to. If it's like from my family, I have this blaring insecurity that they might be mocking me or feel disappointed by criticizing my faults, even though I know deep down those are not their intentions. I never feel this way if it's from people I just met or barely know, because I give them the benefit of the doubt. In the end, I always kinda feel my family sees me as an entitled asshole who thinks he doesn't need any criticism, and I don't see myself overcoming this anytime soon. That's not unreasonable in my opinion. I don't know your family dynamic, but family can either dump on you unfairly or praise you unfairly. With strangers you can at least be sure there's no emotional baggage. They talk down to people working minimum wage jobs. It's really bad feeling. When I was growing up as a kid, I have seen my dad go through a lot of it. He even cried sometimes. Man, it always hits me in my guts, the amount of sacrifice my dad made for me. Wish to repay him in 100 folds. They think their perspective outweighs yours on every single issue. This was a serious issue with someone I was trying to date. I knew she was confident, but I didn't realize she had an ego problem until this sort of thing cropped up. I remember at one point I accidentally explained something she already knew after she asked a rhetorical question over text message. Obviously, I can't judge tone perfectly over text, and it was some simple question that only took me a minute or two to explain, so I did. She was pissed, and snapped at me for daring to assume she wasn't all-knowing already. I gave both of us some space to calm down, then went to her and explained my side of it, that I was sorry, I couldn't judge her tone over text, didn't mean any offense, and only wanted to help. Her response was to completely disregard that. Because her perspective was that I had clearly just assumed she was stupid and tried to swoop in and coddle her, and she openly admitted that her own perception of the situation was all that she cared about anyway. We never ended up dating, funnily enough. I have a coworker who's like this. He always reminds me that he used to think like me and that one day I'll share his point of view, and the reason it ticks me off is that he brings this up whenever I ask advice on how I can improve my job performance, and he just decides this is what he should spend his time telling me. Also, everything about him is positive and he has to be the best. Even when you don't ask, you have to know why he's great. Pivots any conversation to a story about themselves that makes them sound smart, interesting, or worldly. I was in Peru a few years ago, and our local guide kept doing this. We'd be talking about what to pack for the Inca Trail, and he was all like, I have been a guide on the trail for 12 years, and I can tell you it's deadly to start off without a 4-day supply of blah, blah, blah. Insufferable. I knew a girl like this. She had super rich parents and went to different countries multiple times a year. She would bring up a random place and then ask if you had ever been. When you say no, she would do this fake shocked face and be like, you haven't been to Tunisia. When I went to Tunisia the last 3 times. And then when she's done with one country, she will just move on to the next. She never bothered to act shocked or even respond to people who said things like I've never been on holiday before, because she didn't care and she wasn't really shocked. Because when people have never been on holiday at all, it means she can't keep bringing up random countries that she's been to. They never admit when they're wrong, even when it's wildly apparent to everyone else. They constantly bring up that they use Reddit. As someone who uses Reddit, I have to agree. Just the other day I was telling my coworker how I use Reddit and it makes me superior to everyone else. He then said he uses Reddit too, and it's like, wow there, but I don't care, everyone uses Reddit. It doesn't make him better than me. The nerve of some people. It offends me personally as someone who uses Reddit. Man, fuck that guy. You should frame him for murder. Let me tell you something. I have the best ego. Only the best. You know it's the best, but the fake news wants to say it's not. But I know I have the best ego. Many people told me I have the best ego. But you'll never hear it from them. That was hard to write. They also tend to be hypocrites, I think. There's a difference between having an ego and having an ego problem. Having an ego because you're the best at something is acceptable. Let's say you're the best brain surgeon in the world. Or the #1 tennis player in the world. Having an ego about that is not a problem. An ego problem is when you're not the best, but you act as if. The golf pro at your local country club who played a few rounds professionally but struts around like he's the best player ever? That's an ego problem. Right. A certain amount of narcissism is healthy. Some people, who are doormats in life, could use more of it. It's when it goes extreme does it become a disorder. Oh, I have to disagree with that. If you're the best brain surgeon in the world and you know it, well, that is definitely an inflated ego. People with inflated egos, it's all about them, and I do not like anything about that person. Just keep your head out of the clouds. With your head up in the clouds, all we can see is your ass, and nobody likes an ass. They constantly interrupt you when you're talking, especially to correct you. They seek to be the center of attention whenever someone else is doing something. They can never be respectful enough to say that they did a good job. They nearly think they could do better. As a musician, I see this one all the time. They are always trying to impart some kind of wisdom on you. In some cases they start a conversation with "let me teach you something." This is indicative of a narcissistic behavior, but be warned, this could also be a person who has severe inferiority complex trying to compensate for the fact that they have no self-esteem. This post is about me, isn't it? They act bored, uninterested in conversations not pertaining to them. Often compare some aspect of themselves to another, and do so frequently talking down to others about various topics. Not allowing someone else to have the spotlight has to turn a conversation back to them in some way. Overconfidence when they meet someone. It's hard to put into words the difference between being comfortable meeting someone new and being too comfortable. I think it's natural to be a little shy and nervous when you meet someone new. Someone with an inflated ego has no inhibitions around new people cause they already think they are better than them. The conversation isn't about trying to get to know them. The person with an inflated ego is already making the conversation about themselves and drawing and feeding off everyone else's attention. Felt this with a friend's new boyfriend almost immediately. He turned out to be an arrogant prick. Just listen to them. You can always figure out how self-centered they are by the amount of times they use me, I'm, etc. Try tell them something that happened to you. Do they somehow make it about themselves? Express the slightest difference in opinion. Do they squirm and argue aggressively without facts or anything to back it up? It doesn't take much to see it. From my experience, they always try to one-up you. For example, they'd hear you tell an awesome story or show off something you've been working on and try to make it about themselves and what they've achieved without letting people compliment you all the time. Some people might also say that they told you something smart or funny that you said. If someone told a group of friends a riddle, they'd say, hey, I told you that before, or I made that riddle up, even if you got it from the internet or made it up yourself. Even happens with jokes or stories. Pretty much trying to make things about them a lot, or if someone is better at them at something they would try to put that person down and say it's a start or not bad for a beginner, no matter how long you've spent on it, how good it is, or how long you've been practicing that skill. They make things bigger than they actually are. Get more people involved with their drama and constantly talk about it. Make a huge deal out of something tiny. Constantly talks about themselves. You see it a lot in Reddit comments where the thread is about some horrific event or the OP made a thread pouring their heart out. Then along comes a comment about some personal story that user has. It's vaguely related to the original post but has thousands of upvotes and completely derails the entire thread.